When you reach the limit of your mastery, what do you do next?
I became very interested in alternate reality games as a form and really wanted to get one of these grants, but not to work with somebody who was working on video games, but someone who was really pushing the envelope, thinking about not just games, but also play and experimentation and transmedia art. And Xin Wei was really one of the most interesting thinkers that I could find anywhere in the world doing this kind of work.
My own work was about looking at how we can actually make meaning in the world, using gesture, using computational media, but also using forms like dance and music. We'd been doing this kind of work for 20 years in the laboratory, but here was a chance to do something at scale.
Xin Wei's team was working on at first completely separate project in which we were creating a sandbox inside of a black box theater and running all kinds of experiments with that. And so then rather than producing our own sandbox, we started getting footage from what they were doing and creating viral videos for our players, imagining this sandbox that was existing in another time and another space.
We tried to look at the formation of the event, in this case, the alternate reality game on campus and in this building that was just being opened up. But at the same time, develop the techniques specific to that event in the laboratory, marrying laboratory practice in a different city in Canada with this pedagogical practice in a great university with amazingly well-prepared students.
The students, they weren't merely a stage in the project. I mean, they were really full collaborators for most of the game production. The game itself, the project, focused on 3 different conspiracy groups that had formed around Hyde Park in the city of Chicago. And each of the 3 groups was obsessed with a different modality or a different way of being in the world. So there was one group called Sonos that was obsessed with sound, and they covered their eyes, and all of the puzzles that they created were sound and audio based. There was another group called Ortgeist that was obsessed with objects, and so all of their little games had to do with objects, and object-oriented philosophy came into this in various different ways. The third group had to do with movement and light, right? And so a lot of their challenges were very physical. The object of what the project was, I mean, this was really the central mystery of the game, is what is the project these 3 disparate groups are working on?
What could an ethical aesthetic practice be, right, in which people could invent new modes to assess whether this is meaningful or not, and then deploying it, with people who are not out there to be experimentalists or to be artists or to be any particular, discipline. These were students, right? That's the experimental part of our collaboration.
We never announced to the players that it was a game, so that mystery was alive the entire time. That idea that players had to negotiate the status of the event that they were taking part in.
We also wanted to actually have a public event in addition to the game itself, right, which was a symposium on play. When Patrick suggested this idea of looking at games, since I was coming from the area, I said, well, okay, let's look at the notion of game and explode that. We could actually expand the notion of game and play to all disciplines, not just within, let's say, the study of games and study of play. We could invite scholars and practitioners from anywhere.
Invited participants not to give papers, but to think about play within their own discipline and to give us an experience of that in some ways. The Game Changer Chicago Design Lab created this experience where the cocktail party at the beginning of the conference was actually a hidden game, and so you had to take apart pieces of the room in order to figure out what this, to find this narrative and find your way through that space.
So I was really excited when I saw that this Gray Center was called Gray Center for Arts and Inquiry. It leverages all those deep disciplines with generations and centuries of practice behind it, but it stands to one side, so you can say, but what else could it be?
I was still thinking about art as mostly operating at a level of kind of performance and not thinking about art as a way of thinking. One of the things that I found out from players afterwards is, they had learned so much, they had a wonderful, in some cases, transformative experience, but oftentimes they didn't know when we were improvising or when we were giving them choices. All the possibilities that we saw on our side as designers, they weren't necessarily seeing as players. And so, I took that very valuable piece of feedback and into the subsequent games tried to build in more moments where those players could come and see the game from the perspective that we, the designers, were seeing it, but also from other perspectives. I mean, just to open up the range of possibilities. None of those things would have been possible without our collaboration.